And sorry, one thing. Can you
Yeah.
add at the end, but when they can find us, they can now find us on YouTube, and to remember to like and subscribe and
Ooh,
click the
yes.
bell icon for notifications.
Okay, hang on. Yeah. How does everyone else say it? It's like
My kids can say it perfectly because they have fake YouTube channels.
that's probably I should get Joanna up here because she could
Yes.
probably do a better
Yeah,
job too.
Ellie's been
Like,
practicing for a long time.
welcome back to the Modern Lady podcast. You're listening to episode 88. Hi, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Lindsay, and today we are sharing ideas for Christmas gifts that will help you curate a collection of much-loved treasures in your home.
Whenever we talk about homemaking here on the podcast, we realize in a way that each of us are the curators of our homes, that we, to a large extent, control the flow of the things that come through the front door, and we want to be intentional about what we allow in that will then make up our space. This week, we have some great ideas to get you started curating your Christmas lists for both yourselves and your loved ones.
But first, if you enjoy this episode of the Modern Lady podcast, would you please take a minute to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast? When we receive ratings and reviews, our podcast becomes more visible and easier to find for new listeners. We would also love it if you shared this episode with your friends. Let us know what you think. Your comments mean the world to us.
Before we get to this week's shout out, we are so excited to announce that you can now finally listen to the podcast on our new YouTube channel. We're working on uploading our entire library of episodes from the last 2.5 years so that you can enjoy and share the show on YouTube as well. Just search for the Modern Lady podcast and make sure you click subscribe and the little bell icon that will notify you whenever something new is posted. This week's shout out goes to Miriam Domestic, who left us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and said, quote, "Whenever I am sick, the house feels like a bad camping trip. There are clothes everywhere, the food is from cans, and no one really has a good time. I had a friend recommend this podcast to me a while ago, and I started to play it when I was climbing Mount Laundry. I am so glad I did. For the last year, it has been a life goal for me to start loving domesticity, especially since I am now homeschooling, and this podcast brought some dry thoughts and in-the-dark efforts to real life. I'm feeling so great, even though I am so sick, and the house is a joy to be in. It's so wonderful to hear the encouragement and wisdom that you ladies give in every podcast. God bless." End quote. Thank you so much, Miriam, for your comments. We are also quite familiar with Mount Laundry and the comforting companionship of a podcast during the climb. We hope you are feeling better soon. And if you would like to leave us a comment, you can do so on our website, www.themodernlady1950.wordpress.com, or you can leave us a comment on Facebook or Instagram, where you can find us at The Modern Lady Podcast. But before we get into today's chat, Lindsay has our Modern Lady Tip of the Week.
Welcome back to the final part in this 5-part series on calling card etiquette. Today we're going to look at some of the social expectations of men visiting with women during the Victorian age. A gentleman would require an invitation to visit with a lady. He could not solicit a call on his own. I'm sure he could drop some hints, but he would have to wait for a formal invitation. If the family found the short first visit agreeable, then an invitation to join them for dinner would be sent soon after that first visit. If the dinner went well, then the gentleman would be seen as an acquaintance and would be invited over with more frequency, joining the family on informal occasions. If the woman was a young woman, then her mother would send out the invitations. If she was older, she could invite the gentleman herself. Businessmen, not the men of old money and leisure, couldn't pay visits during the afternoon as they were often working, but there was still no excuse not to respond to a lady's invitation, especially if she or her family has done favors for the man. He must find a half hour to pay a visit, and this visit could happen on weekdays up until 6 p.m. He was also permitted to visit on Sundays, as most people were open to receiving visitors on Sunday afternoons. During the week, a gentleman was permitted to visit wearing an overcoat, usually brown or blue, a fancy waistcoat, which is a modern-day vest, and a derby hat. And again, that was not worn in the drawing room. Men never received visitors. It was always the woman who received visitors. If the married man had a visitor, it was his wife who officially received the guests. If the man was single and another gentleman wanted to visit, then they would meet at the club. All in all, calling in on your friends and acquaintances was considered a courtesy for ladies, but it was a requirement of gentlemen. No excuse could be made for not returning a visit. If someone was out of town or ill, they would be expected to send their calling card and then to visit as soon as they could.
Hmm. I was thinking about this as you were talking about like all the rules for the gentlemen,
Hmm.
um, that they would have to wait to be invited.
Yes,
Right? So it was the women who would initiate the visit.
that's correct.
And what a stark contrast that is. Sometimes we hear that, if you're a little bit more traditional in your dating, let's say, that it's
Mm,
more conventional to wait for the man to make the first move. When
yes.
in history, it would have been the opposite, at least during this time period. I thought that was
That
interesting.
is very interesting. You're right. So now
Hmm.
I'm going to have to research when that changed, and and I
Yeah.
wonder if that's like a post World War II type of thing. Like it feels like it's more of a
Mm.
1950s type thing.
Yeah, that's right. It's so interesting when you study the cycles of history and realize like how much has shifted and ebbed and flowed over the centuries depending on circumstance and culture. Over the last few years, we've shared many a recommendation that we're loving from week to week. Our hope is that these ideas that we pass along will help add beauty and joy to your lives as they have in ours. Now, with the holidays just around the corner, we know that many of you are hoping to do much of your Christmas shopping in advance, like us. And so we wanted to compile a list of several things that we're enjoying ourselves or that we're eyeing ourselves to help give you some ideas. Right, Lindsay?
Yeah. And, I always wonder if our listeners listen all the way through our episodes and then we
Mm-hmm.
get messages from them, right? Saying, oh, I bought a book you guys recommended. And it's something we recommended 2 years ago. Or I finally watched that movie
Mm-hmm.
and I have to go back in my own memory and be like, oh, yeah, I did read that. Or I did
Yes.
watch that. So you guys really do listen and it makes us really excited. So we love having this opportunity to share the things that we are extra excited about right now because it's a fun time, right? To get our shopping done
Mm-hmm.
and to
Mm-hmm.
buy. We want to make sure that we're very careful, like you were saying in the opening, about what we are bringing into our homes. It's one of our messages. So things that have value, things that can become heirlooms, things that we've been really thoughtful and intentional about. And so that's kind of what we were thinking about when we were compiling this list. We're going to give you a few actual suggestions, but some of it's more of just the idea to kind of get you excited about choosing some gifts for your family.
Yeah, because every person is different, but I
Hmm.
think we are all joined together in the mission to be intentional about our homes. And that's the beauty of it, that we can all have the same mission and purpose, but it's going to be expressed in so many different ways. So, yeah, consider this gift guide a springboard into when you sit down to make up your own lists for the coming holiday season.
And I want to note too that although we're all different, I think there's a huge trend that you and I have been experiencing for the last couple of years. We're seeing a lot more people about going back to these more vintage and traditional things in our homes and way of living. It's not just a few of us crazy people
Hmm.
anymore. And
Yeah.
so when we compiled our list, a lot of these things are just very traditional and classic things. But I think a lot of people, that's what they're looking for. This has been a really
Hmm.
weird year, right, for everybody. And
Hmm.
if it's taught us one thing, all of this time being spent in our houses means I think it's sparked within people or renewed within them this idea about having things that are provide entertainment, wholesome entertainment within our houses, right? There is no escape
Hmm.
sometimes. And so that really goes back to things that are kind of timeless from when people didn't jump in their cars all the time to seek entertainment elsewhere. So yeah, our lists are things that you and I have kind of always loved, but I do see a general trend moving in this direction in the rest of the world.
Hmm. So we've kind of broken this whole list down into a few different sections. We're going to talk this episode about books and movies and music and household items, some toys as well, just to get your brain cells thinking. But we are big bookies, as we
Hmm.
talk about often on the podcast. So we felt most comfortable
But
starting
but
here,
not an actual
right?
bookie. A bookie is like takes gambling money, right?
Oh.
We're not actual bookies, people.
I just took foodie and I applied it to books, and that's how I got bookie.
And
So
you made a criminal.
Oh, sure. Why not? So we are bookies in the book sense, but also just bookworms is probably the more correct term. This is
Yes.
coming off to a great start.
We love books. So
Yes.
I think that my recommendation for our listeners is that it's something I've actually recommended many times. I am a proud Kindle reader, and I know that there's still like teams, right? There are team paperback
Mm,
slash hardcover, like real book, and team e-reader. And I never thought I'd love the e-reader. I got it for free. I've said this before in the podcast. I got it reluctantly. It just came with a new self-run contract years ago, and it's the Kindle Paperwhite, and I fell in love with it. And I have said it's what got me through all the years of co-sleeping and breastfeeding because I could read in with one hand on my side in the dark in the room. The lighting is beautiful on it. It's not a blue light. The texture of the screen feels lovely. I have 380 books on there. I just
mhm,
really, really would say if you've been on the fence about getting an e-reader, or if you're thinking about a gift for like your 13 or 14-year-old, which is me with a child who's about to be 14, get the Kindle. Now there is the Paperwhite that
mhm,
I have. It's about $140 Canadian. And it's waterproof now. There's the ones that aren't the Paperwhite that have like a front light on them. I don't know how well those work.
mm.
I think the Paperwhite is the better. It's the best of the models. I think if you're going to go e-reader, go for the Kindle Paperwhite.
Yeah, and I will say that I have the Kobo, so
Mhm.
that's, is that Canadian?
Kobo is
Is
owned
that
by
more
Indigo. Yeah. Indigo
Yeah.
chapters, right?
Mhm, mhm. So and I really love my Kobo as well. So
Mhm.
mine is a similar type of thing. It's paper white, type of lighting. I was one of those people on the fence for a long time. I really
Mhm.
just wanted the actual book in my hands.
Mhm.
But I have since become like that girl in the meme, like that, cute little girl with the Dora haircut who's just
Mhm.
like, "Why not both?"
Yeah.
And then everyone, like, raises her up with palm leaves.
Yes.
And that's how I feel about e-readers and real books. Why
Yeah.
not both? Because I love seeing a bookshelf with all of my, hard copy books,
Mhm.
but when I'm going camping and stuff, I love that I can just throw my e-reader in my bag and I can bring, like, dozens of books for a fraction of the weight and the space taking up in my packing.
I love that you mentioned the bookshelves because obviously I still love books too. And so I have a rule where if I really, really love a book on my Kindle, I go ahead and I buy the hard copy version of it.
Mhm.
And so that I make sure I have both. And this kind of leads into the next things about books that you and I really love owning and love having in our houses, right? And
Mhm.
so I, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of the classics. I started 3 years ago a little challenge I set for myself about speaking about the Kindle, reading all of the classics that I had downloaded on there and was never getting around to reading because most of them are free or like $1.99. And so I'd filled my Kindle with all of the 100 classics to read before you die. And so 3 years ago, I decided to start reading them, and it's been the greatest journey. I'm so glad I'm doing this. I'm still working my way through them. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the classics. And so whether they're on there or even places like HomeSense are selling collections of the
Mm.
classics for really good prices that are beautifully bound. And
Mhm.
so I really want to encourage people to look at any of the lists online of the top 100 books of all time or the top 100 classics or the top 100 books to read before you die. And or there's even a scratch off poster with the top 100 books on it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I
and then
love
start
those.
to gather those books, right? Start to build your own collection of the 100 books you should read before you die and have them in your house.
Mhm. The one thing I like about that idea is that those really serve as decor items as well as
Mhm.
good reading, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially if you do find those beautiful bindings,
Mhm.
to have a bookshelf of that, that totally acts as beautiful decoration that adds to a room. For me, it's always been and it always will be about the story.
Mhm.
And if it's a good story, I'll read it and I'll cherish it forever. So I would really recommend sets and series that are timeless and that can be revisited over and over again at all ages. The one that we're reading right now with the kids is The Chronicles of Narnia.
Mhm.
I never read those as a child.
Mhm.
This is actually my first time reading through the entire series. I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when I was a kid,
Mhm.
but I can't get over how much it sticks in my head now as just something I can't wait to get back to and read more of. I guess it's true that if it's good children's fiction, if it's good children's literature, then not just kids will enjoy it.
Mhm.
And if it's a captivating story and if people are just going to be drawn into a world of imagination and creativity, I think it's worth a place on your bookshelf. So I would encourage people to ask around. People are the best sources of getting your what to read next recommendations. And if you find a series that you or your kids really, really love and can't stop thinking about, I would definitely consider adding hard copies to a bookshelf for the next person to just walk by, glance at, and take down to start reading.
Okay, so we have our books all sorted out, and you and I are big movie lovers too, right, Michelle?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Mhm. So, one of the big trends I noticed this year, and it's been growing over the last couple of years, but COVID made the backyard movie a really big thing this last year. And we haven't done that yet. And so I thought, what a great family Christmas gift. So I just looked up on Amazon what that would cost, and you can get their top rated Amazon bestseller outdoor projector plus the screen for about $160 Canadian. And so I
Mm.
am definitely going to be showing that to Jason tonight because I think we would love that. My parents are, I think we've asked for a fire pit from them for our family gift for Christmas. So if we get
Mm.
finally an outdoor fire pit and an outdoor movie all set up, I'm ready for the spring.
Oh my goodness, that is such a good idea for a family Christmas gift.
Hmm.
I will say, I did borrow a projector from my parents. I think it was 2 summers ago. My kids
Hmm.
were, younger then, but in the summer, it gets dark really late.
Yeah. Forgot about
But
that.
but your kids are older, so
Yes.
there's that for sure. And then also too, if you have a fire pit, you can definitely be starting those movie nights earlier in the spring maybe,
Hmm.
and later into the fall, which to me sounds fantastic. Like, why not bring Hygge outside? And, I think that's great. There's another projector that I see on Instagram a lot, and I am intrigued by it, but it is, I think, a little bit more of a pricey item, but it's called the Cinemood. Have you
Mm.
ever heard of
No.
this? So the Cinemood is like a little cube. It's tiny,
Mm.
and I think you charge it like USB. But it comes preloaded with, I think Disney Plus and a couple of other subscription services. And then because it's a cube design and you don't plug it in, you can bring it with you in the car. I've seen people use it in their bedrooms. They will project the movie onto their ceiling
Mm.
and they can watch TV. You can upload your own shows or hook up your own different subscription services onto them as well. And I've just been very interested in something like that as well. Especially, I know we were mentioning we're seeing a trend as well of people moving TVs off of their main floors
Yes. Yep.
or just getting rid of TVs altogether.
Yep.
And I think this would be such an interesting concept to play around with if you're not going to have TVs, if you say want to create a different kind of atmosphere or ambiance for your main family sitting room, and you don't want a TV on the wall, to have something small that you can pull out like a projector or the Cinemood and just a blank space on the wall to watch something when you feel like it. I think is such a fascinating go between of those two ideas.
I love that. I have not seen that at all. It is really interesting because I'm seeing, yeah, two different trends. Well, I guess three. So they're the people who are getting rid of their TV on their main floor altogether, which is something we've thought about for years. Except for we'd have gaping
Hmm.
holes in the wall and wires everywhere. Like it's just kind of a logistical nightmare right now. I also know some people who are going back to VHS, who are going like old
Mm.
school 80s and just picking up, at a yard sale, one of those TVs with the built-in VCR right in it and going to pick up
Yes.
old movies like that for their kids, and that's it. And then I know other people who are splurging on the swoon worthy Samsung TV that can look like art,
Yes.
right?
I
And
love those.
oh, it's stunning. I just looked them up on Best Buy, and they're part of their Black Friday sale, and so you can actually get one for about $1,200, which is a lot less than I was expecting. They're beautiful, and what a great way if you're going to have a TV because you do enjoy TV like I do. Um,
Mhm.
these what I love is that when you buy like a classical art package or something, you're also then displaying in your home
Mm.
changing images of classical art that you can change out all the time, and that your kids can get really used to seeing these pieces. And so again, if you use it right rather than it using you,
Mhm.
there are extra benefits
Mhm.
with that. Now, I just saw them. We have to do a little plug here for our Instagram account that you and I both love, called In Honor of Design. Find
Yes.
them on Instagram if you're not already following her. It's a lovely account. They just installed one of those TVs, and oh, and they put like the gold frame around it, and in the art on it's just beautiful. So if you do decide to splurge for your family, perhaps you want to look at
Mhm.
that Samsung TV.
Oh, yeah, and I especially love it too because, like what you're saying, it becomes part of your whole, flow of the room,
Mhm.
and exactly what you're saying, like, it now works for you then, whereas sometimes I feel like a TV can be very dominating.
Mhm.
It can sometimes take over, but,
Yeah.
there are more designs coming out that allow you to, put TV back in its place, we'll
Mm.
say,
Yeah.
and take back a bit of your control over the feel of your home, but also still your enjoyment of, what you do for entertainment. Another really good gift idea, when we're talking about movies is subscriptions to streaming services.
Mm.
I got this idea actually, I can't take credit for it because it was my brother and sister-in-law who gifted my sister last Christmas with a Disney Plus subscription. And I thought that was just the most brilliant thing ever. My sister is a huge movie buff. She loves movies, and in particular, she's always loved. Well, now it's hard to like anything outside of Disney because they own everything, but you know. But having said that, then their subscription service is quite varied. And there has been such an explosion of different varieties of subscription services. So this year with so many options, it's definitely been on my mind for other people, but also for myself because I keep eyeing up the PBS
Uh-huh,
Masterpiece
me
subscription.
too. That's
Okay.
next.
And if I had that and BritBox,
Oh,
I would literally never need to leave my house
I
for
know.
entertainment ever again.
Yep. Okay, so let's say you're not a TV person, but you're a music person. And, we've talked before a lot about how much we both love record players. I believe it might have been on one of our
Mhm.
previous gift giving guides. I still use our record player all the time. I'm sure you guys do too. So we're
Mhm.
going to continue to push the idea of buying a record player. If you haven't done it yet, do it. Like, they're
Mhm.
everywhere. Our local home census here sell record players and records. Like, it's just they're so huge right now. So get a record player. It really, nothing else comes close to just the feeling of putting on the record. And then I want to suggest that you can either really spend time going through like secondhand stores and flea markets and looking at the old records, but a lot of the classic records and a lot of the new records, or artists are coming out with records. So you really
Mhm.
have a good selection there now more than ever. So you can either go to Value Village, which you've patiently looked with me, Michelle, as we've been crouching on the
Yes.
floor going through 500 records, or you can go on Amazon or to a local music store and buy any brand new pressed, excellent, good quality records out there. But I still think it is like the perfect gift idea.
Mhm, and it is also a good family gift too because those things draw kids like
Mhm.
nothing else, right? I think they just like to watch the thing going around and
Yeah.
around. I think
Yeah.
it's fascinating to watch. And then it kind of forces you to kind of stop and listen to music too. I find it's a different listening experience
Yep.
to versus when I have headphones in or if it's on a speaker or it's digital music. And I still haven't quite figured out if that's because I'm just terrified of leaving the record player unattended with
Mm.
my children around.
Mm.
And I feel like I need to sit and supervise it, or if I actually just quite enjoy the listening experience of stopping and enjoying a piece of music.
Speaking of kids, I would love to get my hands on the Fisher Price one that had the Walt Disney
Yes.
records. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, when it's time to turn the page when you hear the chimes ring like this.
Yeah.
Like, those are magical. And I think
Mhm.
our kids would love to sit and put their own record on, gently, and be able
Mm.
to listen, like look through books like that. So now I am adding that to my list right now.
Yeah. As we speak,
Yep.
as we record, right?
Yep.
But swinging wildly from vintage all the way up to modern day, I do have to still plug as well all the Bluetooth options for listening to music,
Mm-hmm.
speakers and headphones. So we've had a Bose Bluetooth speaker for a few years now. It's never given us problems, and it's clear, it's loud, but it's so small. And
Mm-hmm.
for headphones, I still can't do a lot of housework without my beloved Bluetooth headphones.
Mm-hmm.
I had the Skull Candy headphones for a while, and unfortunately they broke after almost constant daily use for like 2 years straight.
Mm.
So I really can't complain about them. I don't know if they were made for stay-at-home
They weren't
homemakers.
they weren't tested for that.
No,
Just for
that's right.
like people working out and people in the military and like hardcore thing, but not for a stay-at-home mom.
That's right. They weren't anticipating that kind of
No.
intensity.
No.
Um,
Oh.
silly. But I have to say, and I've replaced them since then, and these ones have given me no problem either. And it just not only is it great to be able to listen to your podcasts or audiobooks as you go about your duties that you're going to have to do anyways, but it is an extra added bit of comfort knowing, like you often say too, Lindsay, like you're not going to rip your ears out if you catch the cord of your headphones
Oh,
on an
multiple times a
appliance.
day. They're gonna be like, "What was her
Hmm.
cause of death?" And they'll be like, "She ripped her ears were ripped out when she was putting the dishes in the dishwasher." It's like every day I have a mini heart
Yes.
attack over. But yeah, I think it's time. If Jason's listening, which he's not, I think it's time I get some Bluetooth headphone earbuds.
Okay, but what if you just want to kind of settle down for a little bit, right? And you want to spend some time with your people, but you really want to engage with them. Well, I don't think that anything could beat good old-fashioned board games. Right, Lindsay? You're such a fan of board
I was
games.
gonna be like, not right, Michelle. I I do not enjoy a good board game night. I have tried. There are some okay, let me just be really clear here. There are a few games I love that nobody will play with me.
Mm,
So if somebody
what are
wants to play
those?
Scattergories,
I will.
Scattergories,
That's my
thank
favorite
you.
game. Yeah, okay.
I finally got it on my phone, and I don't play games on my phone. And I'm like, oh, I'm such a boomer. I'm so excited about my one game on my phone. So I play categories on there, and then I enjoy the game of life because I'm still excited when they get married, and then you put them both in the little car. I love I love a good round of Candyland.
Okay. This is good.
So, but it has to be the vintage Candyland. So that actually leads into the fact that I enjoy the idea of collecting vintage board games. I
Mhm.
might not play them, but I
Mhm.
love having them in our house. And there are some doozies on eBay that are hilarious. There have been a lot of board games. So there's
Mhm.
one that's called, I think it's called the Catholic game. Anyways, it's hilarious. You get to either be like a guardian angel, or one of the gospelists or the Virgin Mary, and that's your
Oh,
game piece. And you can pick up like cards that are like temptations or like acts of mortification. It's like, and I'm like, this game is like $120 off eBay. By the time I get it shipped to me, and I'm like, I need this game.
I'll
Um,
consider it. Yeah.
Thank you. Or Jason really wants a game from the late 70s or early 80s called the Trudeau Mania, like our
Oh.
old prime minister and our current prime minister. So there's a lot of really good ones. And my mom just dropped off some of my games from the 80s. So like my kids have been playing Monster Mash. So I love vintage games
Mhm. Mhm.
because I just like having them around and they're hilarious. We also just in the vintage game box where my parents found a game called Scruples. Uh,
Oh, yes.
Oh, right. I've shown you some of the
Yeah.
cards. I think it's Canadian from the early 80s, and it's just like you have to literally with your friends, you read a situation and you
Mhm.
have to see how everybody would handle it. And some of them are so out of date and so horrible to read. It was funny. So, and I carry some of the worst offending ones in my purse just to have a little giggle when I'm out in public. So, you actually do like board games.
I do, I do. I will say I'm not a huge strategy game person, right? So
Mm.
and I have my family is full of really competitive people.
Mm-hmm.
So I do enjoy games, but I don't really like I said, highly strategic games, and I certainly don't really enjoy playing those games with very competitive people. It's a scary
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Yeah.
So having said that though, I think I've narrowed it down to what does do it for me for board games, and it has to have like a group feel. So something that we're kind of all in together.
Mm-hmm.
So not competitive. Um, or it's just an opportunity to laugh, right? I
Yeah.
really do love laughing with people. It's one of the reasons I love categories, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's just sometimes the things that people come up with or the tension trying to beat the timer, like it just makes you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the games that I really love to play, this one is strategic, but it's as a group, are those escape room games. They're so much
Oh,
fun.
yes.
Yeah. So they come with the cards and the clues, and often you do it in conjunction with an app on your phone. And you all have to escape from these situations. There's like locked anything from a locked cell to like you're on board a ship and you have to get off, and you're under a time limit just as you would be in an actual escape room. And those are a great option to gift to somebody or to bring to, well, I guess we're not having a whole lot of holiday parties, but whenever we can resume those are great to bring along as well to a dinner party. The other game that I have such great memories of playing with my cousins when we were younger, teenagers, was the game Pit. Have you ever heard of Pit? It's like a
No.
stock market game, but here's the hilarious thing about Pit. It's so loud because you have to try to corner the market on a commodity, right?
Sorry, this is what you played as teenagers.
Yes, but the reason
Okay.
is
Uh-huh.
because you like there's no turn taking. Everyone's
Okay.
just going at the same time. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a real stock market. Everyone's just yelling at each other. You're supposed to be getting your whole hand to be one full hand of one commodity.
Yeah.
But you can only trade like two commodities together or three commodities together. And the only way you can sell it is by yelling the number of cards you have. So
Mm-hmm.
you're just yelling if you have three coffees, say, for example, you just yell three, 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 three. And if someone else is also trading three cards, then you just like throw your cards at each other essentially. And you hope they're the ones you're looking for. And so you're building your hand, but everyone else is too at the same time. And then someone finally just yells, Pit, slams their cards down, and the game is over. It's hilarious and
Wow.
it's chaotic. And my grandma used to be like, can you stop playing this game? Like, um, yeah, it was just hilarious. But games like that, I really think they foster like such a great communal spirit, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know there is certainly a place, and there are a lot of fans of those more quiet strategy games. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. For me, I just like to have a laugh, and I think those ones are really great at fostering that.
And I have to say that I think that even in my case, like it might be slow going at first for any game, but I don't think people ever walk away from a game night going, I shouldn't have played that. Like that
That's
wasn't
true.
very fun, right? Like it always ends up being fun. So for some people like me, it takes me a little while to warm up and to understand how games work. Like I can't figure out a strategy game to save my life. Um, but yeah, I think that it is always something that the family will walk away from, still laughing as you go up to bed, and it is a
Hmm.
really good night.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it wouldn't be a gift guide for the Modern Lady podcast if we didn't now switch to the household items that we could
Hmm.
use to build up our homes and add to our homemaking endeavors. So, Lindsay, I'm interested in hearing your recommendations on the household things we should be eyeing up this year.
Well, now you're talking. So now
Mhm.
we're now we're in my kind of world here. So I have really loved collecting and curating pieces for my hostessing needs for when we
Mhm.
have people here for dinner. And so I have noticed over the years when I'm hosting that when I lay on the table or bring out a few things, there's always like a gasp, like an audible
Mm.
gasp from the guests. And so one of the things that always does this is I have this little just it looks like blue willow, but it's not like blue and white creamer and sugar bowl on a little tray that I bought, I think for $9 out of a little antique store.
Mm.
It's really precious when you bring something like that out with fresh milk or cream in it and a little bit of sugar, right? With people's coffee cups. People don't expect those little things right now. And so those little affordable gestures really do elevate the experience at your home. Or there is, I don't know if you guys have done this, or Michelle, if you've carried in a cake on a cake plant,
Mm-hmm.
cake stand, right? You have to hold the bottom and you walk into the parade into the room with that cake on a cake stand. And again, people are like, ooh, and it doesn't matter how fancy that cake is. If you've just taken the time to put it on a pretty stand from
Mm-hmm.
HomeSense or from anywhere, I bought a few on my local buy and sell group and some at HomeSense. It really does make it look really pretty. And so for housewares, for our homewares, for our hostessing gifts, I just really believe in finding whimsical little fun pieces. And I say whimsical on purpose because I really like good white china
Mm.
as the base for everything, but I really like having little funny pieces like a weird bunny cookie jar from the 1950s, or my cookie
Mm.
jar is a monk that says "Thou shalt not steal" on it. And so, like like having tucked away in my very serious and pristine white kitchen these little bits of whimsy, and
Mm-hmm.
it really those little things really tell a story about you as a homemaker and as a hostess. So collecting those pieces, finding a neat thing, and it doesn't have to be brand new from a
Mm-hmm.
store, like from a store like HomeSense. Go to those antique stores and buy those little beautiful things to gift to somebody that you care about.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that because it can be so personal, right? It can be such a
Mm-hmm.
small item, but if it is something, like you said, whimsical and really that goes with a person's personality, that accents
Mm-hmm.
their curated kitchen or something, that really makes someone know that you know them well.
Oh, totally.
And I
Like
love
salt
that.
and pepper shakers. Do you remember
Hmm.
how people used to collect and I feel like we all got so serious over the last 15 years with
Yes.
our decorating. And you look back over these household goods and these kitchen goods from the 50s and 60s and 70s, and things were silly. Like everything had
Hmm.
faces on it. Like they didn't take themselves as seriously. So I'm all for adding a little bit of that back in. Those things show effort, just show care. And so I love giving little things like that as gifts.
Hmm. Yeah, you know what? Before I really get into what I'm looking for just in the actual physical kitchen, I will
Mm,
say that a couple of years ago, we ended up winning. Phil ended up winning a smoker at a
mm,
work conference. I didn't know what that was when
yeah.
he called. He's like, I'm going to bring home a smoker," and I was
You're
like,
like, "What's his
"What
name?"
is that?"
Yeah.
Very good. Um,
Oh.
and he was like, "Well, it's like about the same size as our barbecue." And I was like, "We don't have room for another thing like that." But I a couple years out, and I am such a huge fan of smoked meats. And I'm not an expert on price ranges or like name brands or anything like that with smokers, but I do see that becoming a trend. Like a lot of men seem to be really get
Mhm.
interested in getting back into smoking. So like smoking meat.
And pipes. There
Yeah,
is all
and
let's
pipes.
not pretend there isn't also a trend back to pipes. Yeah.
That's right. So that could be something you consider, or if you know someone who does have a smoker and is really into it, then I know that Phil is always having to replace the pellets
Mm.
to make the smoke, and you can get different flavored ones that impact the flavor of the meats. So that could be something that you consider.
And you know what
Yeah.
too? Especially again with like COVID, and if we go back into a lockdown, like that's because with a smoker, you need to be there for a couple hours, right? Like
Hmm.
you have to actually be around it. And so it's kind of the perfect time for that as well. There's
Yeah,
not a lot we can do. So you might as well have a cold beer and smoke some
that's
chicken.
right. That's right. And you can home brew your beer and smoke your
Oh,
chicken. Wow,
wow.
hipster while you're smoking your pipe. Hipster explosion over here. Yeah. Oh, delicious hipster. Yeah. Anyways, so but yeah, in the kitchen though, what I'm finding now that we're homeschooling, now that we're home a lot more often, is that we are doing a lot more cooking, and especially during the day, cooking for more people, whereas usually they'd be at school, the kids. So I would love to upgrade some of the usual small appliances that I have in the kitchen to be more effective and efficient. For example, my blender. Phil and I talked about getting a bigger blender a while ago. Right now, we just have the Magic Bullet, the little tiny one. And I said, no, I like the little Magic Bullet because I can put it away in my cupboard. And I liked having things out of sight, out of mind. But now I feel like because the kids are home during the day, we are using it a lot more often to make things like smoothies. Except I have to make everything individually because the cups are
Hmm.
single servings. So it would be great to have a blender that you can make these things en masse. And then the last thing that I've kind of held off, I've fought this for so long, but now I'm very intrigued, is the Instapot. Instant pot. It's not Instapot, right?
I think Instapot is the brand name.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. I'm
And if
getting
it isn't, it should be
it should be.
Instapot.
I
Yeah.
know. In any case, I'm fascinated by those things. I love that it's
Mhm.
both a pressure cooker and a slow cooker and just a regular cooker that you can cook rice in it and meat and whole meals in it. I am interested in the yogurt making that I see happening in it.
Mhm.
So, it's just something that could make life just a little bit easier and more delicious. And I'm always up for both of those things, especially in conjunction with one another.
So the last category that we're going to look at is toys.
Mhm.
We do have a lot of kids between us, and I actually started making a list. I've been asked a lot on social media about what toys my kids have consistently played with, what was worth spending the money on over the years. And so I actually was making this list a couple weeks ago, and then we decided to do this topic today. And I realized that the toys that my kids over the span of 14 years have played with and that have really stuck around were our not battery operated, no flashing lights, like very boring toys. And I
Mm.
know I'm not the first person to say this, but I do think it's really interesting because we love to shove at our kids all of the newest, brightest, loudest things to
Mhm.
make sure they have the hottest toy every Christmas. But yeah, the things when I do step back and think about it that have really continuously been played with are things like blocks, right? So
Mhm.
we have somebody at church gave us a couple years ago a milk crate full of blocks he made himself. So they're just like
Wow.
pieces of deck cut into different
Yes.
sizes or and so
Amazing.
it's just yeah, and some of them have holes through them and then they just had a piece of that like yellow rope and that you could put through them. And my kids have played with those darn blocks so much. And then another thing was we picked up Jenga, the game,
Mhm.
I think at Value Village or something. But my kids rarely play it as Jenga; they play it as blocks, and so
Mm.
they'll do them. My kids are all about thank you YouTube, those videos of standing them all straight up and then pushing one down, right, and then they all go
Yeah, yeah.
and then recording it in slow mo and all these things. And then likewise, they also love dominoes for that reason. So I
Mm.
bought off Amazon a couple Christmases ago a large tub of multicolored dominoes that they don't play the game dominoes, that they use them,
Mhm.
and they'll do them like all like huge, taking up whole rooms of these things, and they'll work for hours on them. So yeah, if I were to pick absolutely one thing that especially my boys have really loved over the years, it's been blocks
Mhm.
or any type of wooden thing that they can push over.
Yes. I will say that too. There's something like I don't remember actually sitting and teaching my kids about dominoes, and
Hmm.
yet somehow they figured out dominoes. And
Like
yeah.
how to actually play the game.
Oh, no, like to set them up and
Oh,
knock them over,
yes.
like, and
Yeah,
make the
like
designs and
it's
stuffs, right? Yeah.
It's just in them, yeah, and if I have to say and then I was thinking about one thing that my girls have well, there's 2 things, that my girls have always loved. We've always been big fans of doll strollers.
Mm.
We have broken many a doll stroller because then the brothers climb in them and then they race down the hall. But they have put everything from bananas to eggs to potatoes to dolls to the cat, everything into a doll stroller and push that stroller everywhere. So those are a really good buy, and a toy kitchen. A toy
Mhm.
kitchen still gets played with. We always put it away for a bit and then we bring it back out. Whenever it's out, even the big kids suddenly are over there on their knees, playing
Mhm.
around, quote, playing around in the kitchen with their little siblings helping them out. So, yeah, I mean, those are classic gifts. Most people know that, but those are really the things that have stood the test of time in our house.
Yeah, I would agree, especially with the toy kitchen. I can't tell you how
Hmm.
many meals I've been made over the years, and I
Yes.
think if only this was real, I would never have
Yep.
to cook again.
And then, you know what? And then I always look over if it's because I usually put it in my kitchen, right? And then I
Mhm.
finish cleaning my real kitchen. Then I'm like, darn it, now I have to clean the toy kitchen
Yes.
because I don't want it looking like a mess. So then I go over and I clean the whole toy kitchen up every night.
Oh, but we should get them like little cleaning caddies, and they
Mhm.
can clean up their kitchen too. I feel like if you set it up for them, if you build it, they will
Mhm.
come type of thing,
It's
right?
true.
Mm-hmm.
And cleaning toys are hugely popular right now. Melissa and Doug have a great line of cleaning
Mm-hmm.
toys I bought for my nephew who's obsessed with cleaning,
Yeah.
and toy vacuums and all that. It's the real life toys, right? That's a
Yeah.
whole category for our little homemakers to be who really like helping mommy out and following you around. So those are great toys.
Yeah, that's a good idea. For us, we have a lot of active toys that kind of go along with what you're saying. They're things that you can just use as you're active out and about and playing, but they're not something that you push a button and it does the play for you. So for us, like we've always loved and the kids have always loved getting flashlights for Christmas. They are fascinated, and over the years, there's been different kinds of flashlights, big ones, little ones, kid ones, grown-up ones,
Yeah.
keychain ones. Keychain ones are super cool, and they're great stocking
Finger ones?
stuffers.
Have you had
Yes.
the finger?
No,
Yes.
I don't know what
Oh,
those
they last for
are.
about an hour. They're
Oh,
from
okay.
like the treasure chest at a restaurant or the
Oh.
dental office or the dollar store. But they have like a little black elastic that goes around your finger and they're all different colors. So you can cover your hands in them. And yeah, they're like an hour
Oh, my
toy and then
goodness.
they're broken. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, that sounds super cool. But the one year we got them all keychain flashlights and hooked them to the
Mm.
zippers of their winter coats. So,
That's brilliant.
yeah, they thought it was amazing. It was like a little zipper pull for them. So it was
Okay,
win-win for
I'm
all of
writing that
us.
one down like right now because that's a great St. Nicholas Day. Like when you just need a
Yes.
little gift,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really great idea.
Mm-hmm. So those are fun. And then also the other one that we really had great success with are walkie-talkies.
Hmm.
We bring walkie-talkies everywhere with us. We bring them on walks when we go on hikes through the forest for them to play with. Just if two of them run a little further ahead and two of them are a little behind, they feel like they're playing some sort of spy game, through the trees, which is great.
Uh-huh.
If you put them all on the same channel, you can add however many walkie-talkies you have. I think right now we have 6. We have one per
Mm,
person if we wanted to. And
mhm,
that comes in handy for Phil and I to keep an eye and an ear out where they are and what they're
mhm,
doing. We also bring them to parks and playgrounds. And we bring them to share with our friends when we meet friends at the playground because the friends think they're amazing. The only thing that you and I were both saying we'd recommend is to not buy the kid ones.
mhm,
Um, those tend to break really easily. And I find that if you teach them how to take care of the walkie-talkies, the ones that are traditionally for grown-ups, they mm, they're really not breakable. Like they're not easy to break these days. So they should
mhm.
probably be fine. And then the last thing, if you're going to get walkie-talkies, get rechargeable batteries because oh my goodness, there's so many batteries involved with walkie-talkies. We learned our lesson. And if you can just plug it in at the end of your trip, that's the best way for sure. So that's our starting off point for our Christmas list this year. And you know what? We hope this gift guide gives some of you, our listeners, some really good ideas. But I think the point that really kept coming up throughout this whole episode and what you and I, Lindsay, want to reiterate also to ourselves is just this reminder of how much control we truly do have over our house. Whether you're someone who tends more towards the vintage and the old school, or whether you're someone who really enjoys new technology and all the latest gadgets that are available, it really comes down to the intention of what you want your home life to be and where your family is headed in the direction they're going. And it is totally within your power and your control to figure that out and to craft and curate a Christmas that best suits your family right now. Okay, it's time for our What We're Loving This Week segment of the show. So, Lindsay, what have you been loving this week?
We thought about not doing this, right? Because we're
Mhm.
just sharing a bunch of things we're loving, but we both still have things. And there's a podcast I've been listening to all week to just truly escape some
Mhm.
things. And it's called the Historical Crimes and Criminals Podcast.
Mm.
I find it's perfect for these cold and dark and windy days. The host is an excellent storyteller. I know you love good storytelling.
Yes.
It's, of course, about murder and other crimes, but
Mhm.
because the crimes are historical and because the host has a really cool Scottish accent, it's not gruesome at all. It's
Are those the parameters? Got it. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, I feel like it's classy crimes, and you guys know I'm joking. I don't believe crime can be classy, but it is really great storytelling, and
Mm.
he is really sharing some important historical information about the legal system and just really cool
Mm.
stuff. So I just needed a break from the heavier things I usually listen to, like theology and politics,
Oh,
to
okay.
just go down a step to historical crimes and criminals. And it's just, yeah, it's absolutely a really perfect thing as we get, into like the long dark nights of winter.
Mhm. What a balance for you with your Hallmark movies. From
I'm
last
a
week.
little darker this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need a bit of everything. So I'm
That's
glad you
right.
found that balance. Yeah.
Thanks. What have you been loving this week?
So we've been loving the TV show Shetland.
Mhm.
This is another one of your recommendations, Lindsay, that we
Mhm.
randomly forgot about.
I still can't believe you just forget about these shows. They're like massive cliffhangers.
I know, I know. We don't know either how it happened because we loved this one too. But I think what jogged our memory was finishing Line of Duty. And then we're like,
Mhm.
wait, did we finish Shetland? And we did not. So it's the perfect kind of a show to watch right now too, though. So I'm glad that we're picking it up right here at the end
Mhm.
of November with the days getting darker and a little bit stormier in the evenings. This series follows Detective Inspector Jimmy Perez and his team. That's how they say it, so I
Yeah,
can't say it any different.
I know people have to understand that it's Perez, like Spanish, but he's in Scotland, and so has a thick accent. There's a
Perez.
thing with his name. It's funny. Yeah,
Uh-huh,
Perez.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they live on and solve murders on the remote Scottish island of Shetland in the north coast of Scotland. So their accents, like what you're saying, on the podcast, the accents are super fun to listen to too, but you will need your captions on because
Yeah,
they're
for sure.
very thick accents. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say this though, that if you're following my trajectory with TV shows and you
Mhm.
are actually watching Line of Duty right now, which was my recommendation from a few weeks ago, this show moves significantly more slowly than Line of Duty. So it may just take a bit of time to readjust to the pacing. It's still
Mhm.
fantastic, just moves at a very different pace, and it kind of caught me a little off guard.
It's not as slow as Broadchurch, though. Do you remember the first season
Oh,
of
yes.
Broadchurch where it's like literally like a tap dripping, like the slowest scenes you'll ever see?
And yet so good, so good.
Yes.
So all of these shows, excellent shows, different pacing, and just be aware that you can go maybe from slow to quick and you won't notice it as much as if you start with the really fast-paced show and you're working your way back down. Okay, that's going to do it for us this week. If you want to get in touch and chat with us about our topic today, you can find us on our website, www.themodernlady1950.wordpress.com, or leave us a comment on Facebook or Instagram at The Modern Lady Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel, which is called, you guessed it, The Modern Lady Podcast. I'm Michelle Sachs, and you can find me on Instagram at MMSachs.
And I'm Lindsay Murray, and you can find me on Instagram at Lindsay Homemaker.
Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.